The beach house of my family has always been a refuge. Since childhood, my siblings and I spent every summer there, building sandcastles, swimming in the sea, and laughing around the bonfire. It was a place where everything seemed possible, where the problems of the real world couldn't reach us. But everything changed in the summer of 2023. After a particularly difficult year, I decided that I needed some time for myself. The beach house seemed like the perfect place to rest and reflect. I arrived there on a sunny afternoon, with the sound of the waves gently breaking on the beach, welcoming me like an old friend. I got out of the car and took a deep breath of the salty sea air, feeling an immediate peace. I spent the first afternoon organizing my things and revisiting each room, each corner filled with happy memories. However, on the first night, something felt different. It was subtle at first, a slight scratching at my bedroom window, as if tree branches were touching the glass. I ignored it, thinking it was just the wind. But as the night progressed, the sounds intensified. They sounded like footsteps in the hallway, soft but unmistakable. I got up to check, but there was nothing. Returning to bed, I began to hear whispers, indistinct but present. Then, I saw a shadow move on the hallway wall, quickly disappearing when I approached. I tried to convince myself that it was just my imagination, perhaps the result of fatigue and loneliness. However, when the doors started to open on their own, creaking slowly as if someone was pushing them, I could no longer ignore it. There was something wrong in that house, something I couldn't explain. I lay in bed, eyes fixed on the ceiling, trying to find a logic to it all. But sleep wouldn't come, and I knew I was just beginning to uncover the secrets that house held. I woke up the next morning with a strange feeling, as if I were being watched. The previous night still lingered over me, and I decided I needed to find out what was happening in that house. With a cup of coffee in hand, I began to explore every corner, looking for any clue that might explain the bizarre events. The basement had always been a place we avoided as children. It was dark, damp, and full of cobwebs, a true horror movie setting. But at that moment, I felt I needed to go down there. Maybe there was something that could shed light on what was happening. I slowly descended the creaky stairs, feeling the cold air envelop me as I delved deeper into the darkness. I used my phone's flashlight to illuminate the path, passing by old, dust-covered furniture and stacked boxes. In the farthest corner, I saw an old trunk, half hidden behind a pile of firewood. With some effort, I managed to open the trunk. Inside, there was a pile of old papers and photo albums. And then, I found a leather-bound journal, its pages yellowed with age. I went back up to the living room and began reading the journal, as if it held a dark energy. The first entries were innocent, describing parties and family gatherings. But as I read on, the tone changed drastically. Accounts of strange sounds, visions of shadowy figures, and finally, a fateful night that ended in massacre. The party that had begun joyfully turned into a nightmare of blood and death, leaving an indelible mark on the house. As I read, the manifestations in the house intensified. It was as if the spirits were reacting to my discovery, increasingly determined to drive me away from the truth. The shadows that had once lurked now moved with more clarity, objects began to fall from shelves, and I could feel an ever stronger and more threatening presence. With each page turned, my anxiety grew. The sense of imminent danger was palpable, and I knew I was meddling in something far deeper and darker than I could have imagined. But at the same time, I felt I had to continue. The journal was the key to understanding the curse that haunted that house, and I couldn't stop now. As the day turned to night, I sat on the couch, the journal still open in my lap, and prepared myself to face whatever was to come. The next morning, I woke up to the distant sound of thunder. I looked out the window and saw dark clouds gathering on the horizon. A storm was rapidly approaching. Within hours, the rain began to pour down in torrents, accompanied by lightning that lit up the sky and thunder that shook the house. The storm was more violent than any I had ever seen. The wind howled around the house, making the windows rattle and the doors slam. Suddenly, the lights flickered, and with a loud snap, the power went out. I rushed to my phone, but there was no signal. The landline was dead too. I was completely cut off from the outside world. Desperation began to set in. The supernatural manifestations that were once merely frightening now became physical and threatening. Objects started flying across the room, thrown by an invisible force. Walls were scratched by invisible claws, leaving deep, terrifying marks. Incessant whispers filled the air, and I could feel the presence of something malevolent around me. As I tried to stay calm, I felt a chill run down my spine. Before I could react, something invisible grabbed me by the shoulders and shoved me forcefully against the wall. The impact left me dazed, and a sharp pain coursed through my body. I struggled to break free, but it was as if ghostly hands were holding me down with great strength. I fell to the floor, gasping and panicked, trying to make sense of what was happening. The attack was swift, but left a lasting impression on my mind. The invisible entity that attacked me wasn't just trying to scare me, it was trying to hurt me. And I knew this was only the beginning. Every passing second felt like an eternity. The manifestations intensified, and I found myself fighting not just for my sanity, but also for my safety. The house, which had once been a refuge, had now turned into a prison of nightmares, where every shadow hid a danger and every sound whispered threats. I was alone, isolated, and terrified, facing forces I didn't fully understand. And as the storm raged outside, an even greater storm was brewing inside the house, determined to destroy me. The attack left me shaken, but also more determined than ever to uncover the truth behind the curse. I picked up the diary again and started reading it more carefully, looking for any clue that might help me understand what was happening. Each page seemed to carry a dark weight, but also a promise of revelation. As I read, I began to find mentions of ancient rituals and local beliefs. Apparently, the beach house had been built on land considered sacred by the indigenous peoples of the region. They believed that guardian spirits protected that place, but that an imbalance could turn them into vengeful forces. The party that ended in massacre was the breaking point. The guests, many of them drunk, desecrated the sacred ground with their disrespectful actions, awakening the fury of the guardian spirits. From that night pieces of the puzzle fell into place, an epicenter of supernatural activity, marked by tragedy. Flipping through old family photos and genealogical records, I realized that one of the massacre victims was an ancestor of mine. She had the same name as me, Julie Jefferson, and her brutal death that night connected her directly to me. The curse wasn't just about the house, it was also about my lineage. This personal connection gave me a new sense of purpose. I knew that somehow, I was the key to breaking the curse. Perhaps the spirits had been waiting for someone from her family to right the wrong committed so long ago. I decided that I needed to face the ghosts of the past and seek the whole truth. I could no longer be a passive victim, I needed to take action. With the diary in hand, I began planning a reconciliation ritual based on the beliefs described by the indigenous peoples. I believed that if I could appease the guardian spirits, I might be able to free the house from the curse. I went to the kitchen and grabbed some candles and herbs I had found in the basement. I set up a small altar in the living room, exactly where the massacre had occurred. As I lit the candles and spread the herbs, I felt a strange calm come over me, as if the spirits were watching and waiting. I recited the ritual words firmly, my voice echoing off the walls of the house. I asked for forgiveness on behalf of my ancestors and offered a tribute of respect and reverence to the sacred ground. As I spoke, I could feel a presence growing around me, but this time it was not threatening. It was as if the house was breathing again, relieved to finally be heard. The ritual ended in silence, the candles still flickering softly. I sat on the floor, exhausted but hopeful, waiting to see what would come next. The house was quiet, quieter than ever. And for the first time since I arrived, I felt that there might be a chance for redemption for all of us. After performing the ritual, the house plunged into an eerie silence. I knew the calm was temporary, a brief respite before the final confrontation. I used this time to prepare, arming myself with whatever I could find, a flashlight, some candles, and the diary, now my guide and shield. Each word I read seemed to strengthen my resolve. As night fell, the storm outside intensified again. The candles flickered, casting dancing shadows on the walls. I knew the spirits were gathering for a final attack. I could feel them around me, their presence stronger and more palpable than ever. I stood in the living room, where it all began, and waited. It didn't take long for the manifestations to start. First, there were whispers, growing into a chorus of indistinct voices. Then, the shadows became denser, moving with clear and threatening intent. I felt a chill down my spine, but held my ground. "I know what happened here," I declared loudly, holding the diary firmly in my hands. "I know about the massacre and the curse. I am here to right the wrongs of my ancestors and to ask for forgiveness on their behalf." The voices intensified, and the shadows began to writhe, forming humanoid figures that slowly advanced toward me. I took a deep breath and continued. "You were wronged, your lives taken cruelly. But revenge will not bring peace. I am here to offer reconciliation, to free you from this torment." At the climax of the confrontation, a vision struck me with force. I saw clearly the night of the massacre, people dancing, drinking, laughing, until violence erupted, turning the celebration into a bloodbath. But then, something more emerged in the vision, a dark secret. The massacre was not just an act of desecration, it was premeditated by someone seeking power through sacrifice. With this revelation, I understood that the curse was kept alive not only by the violence, but by a profound betrayal. "I know the truth," I shouted. "I know that the curse is fueled by betrayal and spilled blood. But now, I break this cycle." In a final act of courage, I tore a page from the diary and burned it in the flame of a candle, symbolizing the end of the cursed narrative. As the flames consumed the paper, I felt a wave of energy sweep through the room. The shadows screamed in agony, but soon began to dissipate, like smoke in the wind. The house shuddered one last time before falling into absolute silence. The candles burned calmly, and the oppressive presence that had surrounded me vanished. I knew the curse had been broken, but not without a cost. I felt exhausted, drained by the experience, but also strangely light, as if a great weight had been lifted from my shoulders. When the storm finally passed, the dawn light illuminated the house. The place that once felt like a dark prison now seemed again like a refuge of peace. I walked through the house, feeling a new energy of tranquility. I had survived something terrible and transformative. The Jefferson family beach house, finally free from the curse, was once again a place where happy memories could be made. And I, transformed by the experience, knew I would never be the same again.